Hi, guys. Welcome back to another episode of Off the Sidelines. My name is Matthew Liam Bruni, and joining me is Benedict Rhodes. We hope all you guys are doing well throughout this pandemic and trying to keep as busy as possible. And Ben, has have you been up to anything lately?
Oh, not really. I'm just hanging out here in Arizona with my friend Cliff Kingsbury. As you can
Yeah.
see in the background there, is just watching some TV or something behind me there. Yeah, other than that, not too much. I've been just watching a lot of NFL draft, trying to pass the time. What about yourself?
Yeah, not much. Same thing with me though. I have been watching the NFL draft that just happened this past weekend, and
We're talking
other
about that
than
a lot
that,
today.
pardon?
So we're talking a lot about that today.
Definitely for sure. Yeah, so before we get into the NFL draft, we're gonna start by talking about the Alex Cora and Red Sox suspension that was announced last week. And of course, as we were recording our episode last week, this just happened that the day of. Uh, so the information we know is that Alex Cora, the former Red Sox coach, is suspended for the whole season, and of course, he was fired because of the Houston Astros scandal that happened in 2017 when he was the bench coach. The Red Sox were stripped of their second round draft pick as they were using replay monitors to steal signs during the 2018 regular season, and also their replay operator was involved in all this craziness, and so he won't be able to be involved in the organization until 2021. So, Ben, do you think this was a good enough punishment from the MLB?
Well, I'll start with the Red Sox. No, I do not think that was enough punishment. You think there's got to be I don't know much about replay operators, but you gotta think there's plenty of them, or enough of them where the Red Sox will easily be able to replace the one they had. And also a second round draft pick. Like the MLB draft is garbage a lot of the time. They have 40 rounds to fill up their single A rosters, and not a lot of those players. It's not like the NFL draft, for example, where top 2 or 3 rounds are going to jump straight into the league. Like the MLB draft all the time isn't that fruitful, shall we say? Um, so I don't like the Red Sox punishment. I think if anything, a first round pick at least would have made sense. But I don't think there should be some other kind of punishment in place, whether it's being fined or something. I don't know, but I think that's kind of a weak punishment. And as for Alex Cora's involvement with the Astros punishment, Astro scandal, sorry. I also think that was a weak punishment. I think MLB needs to make an example out of the Astros and sort of say like we can't tolerate what's going on with them or what has gone on with them, and I think they need to like throw the book at them really. And I think Cora should have got maybe 5 years, like just something really harsh, just to sort of show other managers like this is what happens if you break the rules. And I think
Yeah.
MLB has failed to do that with the Astros so far. What do you think about the two punishments?
Um, I definitely don't think it was good enough. I also thought about when the MLB announced uh, the issues for the suspensions for the Astro scandal. I definitely didn't think that was right. In
Yeah,
regards to this, the Red Sox scandal, I definitely think that Commissioner Robert Manfred took this lightly. I mean, like you said, uh, stripping them of only a second round draft pick is like not going to do much. As you mentioned, there's like many draft picks. I mean, if you could have said like you said, a first round pick or even maybe like a good amount of draft picks would have been better than just one. Um, I don't know I don't know the extent of this scandal. Of course, the 2017 scandal, the Astros. Like I thought, like the Astros should have been stripped of the World Series, but for the Red Sox scandal, I'm not too sure. I don't know if the all the investigations complete. I'm assuming it is, which of course it's a light one,
yeah.
but yeah, but I don't think, especially like firing Alex Cora, like I don't think it was good enough. Maybe they could have done something in regards to the playoffs, maybe like suspend them from the playoffs or like
Yeah,
give them like a certain amount of games, like maybe they start like 0 and 50 or something like that, like give them like
yeah.
50 losses to start the season or something like that. But yeah, like the Astro scandal, I don't think that the MLB did enough.
Yeah, I was gonna say as well, but with the Astros, I think I would argue as well that the Red Sox, what the Red Sox were doing, obviously didn't have the same outcome. Like they weren't as successful as the Astros. But I would argue that what they were doing was maybe worse because they were using actual video replays instead of just banging on a trash can or whatever.
Yeah.
Like I think that's actually worse than what the Astros were doing in a way. But I also think with the Astros, punishment wise, I think you mentioned like maybe starting with 50 losses or something. I think that would make sense, or maybe uh, preventing them from going to the playoffs for 5 seasons or something,
Yeah.
or just like let's say maybe not like, starting with 50 losses, but like almost like a points deduction. So let's say they finish 20 games up on the next team, then you deduct them 25 games, so they finish second place or something. So they
Mhm.
have some kind of like games back deduction, if that makes sense. um, yeah, I don't know. I think MLB needs to really crack down on these people, and they haven't done it.
Yeah, I mean, just like I said, like even going back to the Astro scandal, I definitely didn't think it was good enough. But do you think that the MLB should have stripped like the World Series from even like the Red Sox, but like even from the Astros as well? Looking back at that scandal.
I think I don't know if they should strip the World Series, but I think there's got to be some kind of asterisk beside it at least. Like look at like Barry Bonds' home run record as an asterisk beside it because he allegedly used performance enhancing drugs or whatever. So I think there should be like at least a note beside it, sort of saying like they cheated their way to the World Series. I don't know if they should take back the trophy or the rings or whatever, but like that might be maybe not too harsh necessarily, but I think it's just kind of they still have to hit the ball, they still have to win the games or whatever, even if they did cheat. But so I think that might be a bit far, but I think punishing them for the next 5 years while all their players were in their prime would be just as bad, if not worse than that.
Yeah, and also I was going to mention like during their spring training this season, because of course the scandal started in January,
Yeah,
and when the spring training game started, they I don't know, like just hearing them like even the I think it was the Astros president when they did that conference that one morning, they
yeah.
I don't know, I don't think they really took it seriously, and like even the players were like saying, "Hey, we won the World Series, like what's the big deal?" Like,
Yeah,
they
Carlos
didn't
Correa
take
was like, Carlos was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." Like,
yeah, like
he's
they
obviously
like
like he didn't mean it. Like, I don't think Carlos Correa was actually sorry for what they did.
yeah, you can definitely tell they didn't care about the whole situation. They're just like, "Well, we just want to play baseball and just
Yeah,
like move on." It's like, no, it's gonna be stuck with you guys forever. It's like
yeah,
people are gonna think that your World Series was tarnished in 2017. So,
and they
um,
also the most annoying thing as well is going to be as soon as a pitcher throws at an Astros batter, they're going to get suspended. More games than the Astros player got suspended. So let's say, who did they beat in 2017 again?
the Dodgers.
The Dodgers. So let's say as soon as they come up against the Dodgers in a game, and let's say Clayton Kershaw fires a fastball at Jose Altuve's chin, Clayton Kershaw is going to get 5 games or something. And will it be worth it? Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Will it be justified suspending him over the Astros players? Also, no. But um, I think that's also exactly the point that other pitchers are going to be proving when they throw Astros batters. It's going to be kind of like, oh, you're punishing us, but why didn't you punish them? Like, that's going to be a theme for the whole season. Is going to be sort of people throwing at the Astros and then getting suspended, and then that whole point. I think I think it was Cody Bellinger who said it. How I think he's the first one to sort of put that idea out there. Like pitchers are going to get suspended more games than the Astros batters are going to get.
Yeah. Well, actually, speaking of Corey Bellinger, I wanted to mention just quickly. Can you imagine like what the Dodgers are thinking right now with like
Yeah,
because they were in the World Series in 2017 and 2018, and just to see like both of these scandals like arise like how they had, like I can only imagine like what they're feeling. Like they could have had two titles,
2 rings.
especially yeah. Can you imagine if like we keep talking about like how Clayton Kershaw chokes in the playoffs? I mean he does, but like
Yeah,
if
did last year too.
yeah, exactly, losing the NLDS. But can you imagine like how we would take this differently if the Dodgers won? Like if
Exactly.
if
Yeah.
they're still cheating, even if they
Also,
were still cheating.
I also have a feeling that the punishment would have been harsher if the Dodgers had won that and the Astros had lost but cheated. I feel like the punishment would have been more severe in a way.
Mm.
I don't know exactly how to describe it, but I feel like MLB would have sort of said, not only did you guys lose the World Series, but you're also not going to play in the next couple World Series. It was would be kind of like a nice ribbon on top kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely. And as a Jays fan, I would love seeing the Red Sox not in the playoffs for like the next couple of years.
I think you can't punish the Red Sox one way and not punish the Astros as well. And so if you're not going to punish the Astros, I don't think you can punish the Red Sox that way. I don't think that'd be fair.
Yeah, definitely. Uh, okay, so now we're gonna move on to the NHL. Of course, they suspended their season, as did every other league in the world.
Yeah,
Just in that Thursday of when the WHO considered called the COVID-19 as a pandemic.
yeah,
Uh, the NHL has talked about returning to neutral site games, like all 31 teams play in the same arenas. Uh, do you think like what cities do you think the NHL should consider in regards to neutral site games if they were to return?
yeah. Kind of like we talked about last Wednesday, I think it was when we talked about MLB returning and doing games in I think it was Arizona, Texas, and Florida.
Yeah,
I think MLB should sorry NHL I mean should try and do a similar thing and just try keep it to two or three locations, preferably remote locations or locations that aren't going to be see like a bunch of people crowding around the arenas and stuff. So I think some sites that have been mentioned are Grand Forks, North Dakota, Manchester, New Hampshire, and Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. So I think Saskatoon, for example, I think would be a great one because I think it's not as populated as New York, Toronto, LA, whatever. So I think it would allow a bit more of a buffer around the arenas for sort of like a quarantine zone, if that makes sense. In front of like a hotel with one team, where the whole team stays or something, and I think you want to have ideally as much of the rest of the public away from them as possible. um, I think somewhere like Saskatoon would be good for that. Um, some other cities have mentioned are like Edmonton was one. Las Vegas is a good place because at the moment it's pretty quiet there because there's no tourists and stuff, and so a pretty good place would probably be Las Vegas. Lots of hotels and arenas as well. Um, some of the quieter states like Vermont or Utah, with less COVID-19 cases as well. I know you and I talked about the east coast of Canada as well, maybe like Nova Scotia or something. I think you want to ideally get somewhere isn't populated, but also a place where you can get a lot of hotels or a lot of arenas in order to actually play these games.
yeah, definitely. I think that of course they have to look at a smaller city, like as you mentioned, like somewhere like you said, Grand Forks, North Dakota, or New Hampshire, or sorry, you said Saskatoon as well.
Yeah,
Uh, I think that you need to consider like you have to test people too. Like you have to take their
yeah,
temperatures, perhaps. So that's something else that the NHL would have to do besides booking the hotel rooms and flying everybody in. Like right now, of course, they're probably with their families, so you
yeah,
would have to fly everybody in from. I mean, even the international NHL players, if they're at home right now, like
yeah,
say like in Finland or somewhere in Europe, like you would have to fly them over, but it'd be tough now because of border. Like I don't know about the U.S. border closures. I know that I think they suspended international flights if I'm not wrong.
I think so. Yeah.
So
Or
that would have
non-essential ones anyway.
non-essential, yeah. So
Yeah,
you would have to consider like how they would work around that situation. Uh, I think in regards to like which cities like in North America would host. Uh, I definitely do think like they should look into East Coast uh, an East Coast province like New Brunswick or maybe Nova Scotia or Newfoundland or something like where there's a reasonable arena like a NHL capable arena.
yeah,
Uh, but also you mentioned Vegas, and I know the NBA considered going like doing games in Vegas, which is which would be pretty interesting to do. I mean, considering there's nobody there right now. So I mean that could be also another um, idea, or even like a state like I don't know, like Wisconsin or maybe even
Like somewhere where it's less crowded, maybe.
yeah,
Like
like Wisconsin.
not a Florida, not a California, not a New York. Like, definitely not
No,
New York.
definitely not Florida with how they're opening beaches and everything up right now. I don't
And
think
New
that.
York's been hit pretty hard by the outbreak too, so that'd probably be a place to stay
Yeah,
away from, I think.
yeah. I like I said, like a state like Wisconsin or Nebraska or a smaller state would be reasonable. But
How about the CAA Center in Brampton, Ontario?
hey, that would be that would be cool. Actually, seeing NHL in our city, that would be good. But I don't know.
No one
They
wants to come
would,
to Brampton.
no. Uh, do you think though, since we're talking about uh, like considering how they would go back into the season, like would they? Do you think they would go right into the playoffs, or do you think they would have to go play some regular season games first before the playoffs?
I think most of the season was done, wasn't it? I think they had like 10 games left for most teams or something.
10-ish games, yeah.
Yeah, 10, 12. So I think for that reason, it depends mostly on when they plan on coming back. If they're going to come back in, let's say, June, and the NHL playoffs are long, they take about a couple months.
Yeah.
So I think if you're going to start in June, then maybe you finish the season just to finish the few races that still had implications on the playoffs. But I also think if you're going to be starting closer to an August or something, then it's probably wise to just jump straight into the playoffs and hope you can start next season on time. But I think it depends on how early they start. Well, what about you? What do you think about that?
Um, I think I think they should probably play some regular season games before going into the playoffs. I mean, if you really think about it, it's been like 6, 7 weeks of like who knows if players are practicing right now? Who knows if they can even find a rig to practice in right now?
Yeah.
It's probably tough for them right now. But I do think that they should start with regular season games, like just to get themselves back into the game and like their form. But I was also going to mention that how about would we consider the NHL teams that probably missed the wild card like by a point or two? Like, would we eliminate them right away, or would we just have the 16 teams right now that are in a playoff spot? Like, just go into the playoffs without considering the ones out. Like, that's
Uh,
also something they would have to consider. Do you think what should they do about that?
I think maybe for that they could always just eliminate all the teams that aren't right in the race for it. If they were going to do that, and then maybe have like a little mini playoff between the potential wildcard teams or something. But I also don't like that idea. So I also think maybe they should either just finish the regular season or just do it with the teams that are currently in the spots and not worry if there's a team that's one game back. Like they're going to feel aggrieved by that, if that's the right word. Like they're going to be upset by that.
Yeah.
But at a time like this, like there's not much you can really do about it. So I think either you finish the season or you just cut it off right now and start the playoffs.
Yeah, well, you definitely don't want to. If you definitely don't want all 31 teams, like I don't want to see the Detroit Red Wings playing a game. Like, of course
Yeah,
they look they were bad like the whole year.
yeah,
You don't want to see them play. They've been out for the whole season basically, just since
yeah.
the season started. Like,
And another problem, of course, is like I know some players have been skating in Sweden apparently. Like I know Elias
okay,
Pettersson from the Canucks apparently has been skating in Sweden, which a lot of players in North America aren't happy about because they can't skate over here. So they're upset because he's going to come back in match fitness and everyone else won't be
yeah,
whenever they're finally allowed to. Which I also wonder if maybe they might have to consider like a preseason game or two or some kind of
yeah,
like very high intensity practices anyway because like you can't go from not playing for 4 months to playing playoff games, right? Like that's going to be impossible. People are probably out of shape. People are not, like I said, not match fit. But then some players are skating in overseas, so I think preseason games might have to be a consideration as well. Which is why I think they might have to just do a couple of preseason games, cut off the rest of the regular season, and just start the playoffs straight away. and use what would have been the regular season to play a couple of preseason games to get everyone ready for the playoffs.
Yeah, you mentioned Pedersen working overseas. I mean, right, like here in North America, like COVID cases keep rising. And I know in America, I think they're almost reaching 1 million
Yeah,
cases. So, and it's definitely, I definitely don't think it's gonna decline anytime soon. So it's definitely interesting to see other like European players, like you said, Pedersen, like practicing probably in a country where it's not like as severe as it is here in North America.
or at least in a place where he can isolate himself in a hockey rink and
Yeah, that too. Yeah,
sort of spend most of his time there as opposed to at home or whatever, and then sort
yeah,
of get away with it, I guess.
yeah. Or the NBA or the NHL could maybe take the NBA's approach because I know the NBA announced that they would reopen their facilities depending on like where restrictions are not like don't apply. So
Yeah,
maybe the NHL could do that. Who knows?
yeah. I think maybe they should look at states which have those restrictions being lifted, which is, I guess, Florida, but Florida's not the place to go to right now, I don't think. But
No.
I almost wonder if they could get some kind of. I don't think it's fair, but maybe they get some kind of permission to like have everyone living at their practice facility. If you can find a way to set up like bedrooms, kind of thing, and just practice or like play games at practice facilities or something. I don't know. Just like sort of isolate as a team as opposed to isolate with your families or something. It's kind of
Yeah,
tough, but if you want to return to sports sooner rather than later, that might be the approach to have to take.
yeah. They definitely have to come up with a plan like sooner than later, like in
Yeah,
the next month-ish or so, maybe.
yeah,
Okay, so now we're gonna move on to the NFL draft.
yeah. A lot
Our
about the NFL
recap.
draft.
Yeah, yeah, the NFL draft. Uh, do you want to start with how you thought the NFL uh, did it virtually this year? How did you think like how well did you think they did it?
I thought it worked pretty well actually. I thought doing it from home, I think it's definitely different. Like you don't get to go up on the stage, shake the commissioner's hand, whatever. Like those kind of rituals were gone, obviously, and that was kind of disappointing. But I think it was also really cool to see players inside their own homes and see who they're hanging out with and what they're up to. And we saw a lot of dogs as well, and also the coaches, like seeing my friend behind me here, Cliff's house, and other coaches like Bill Belichick's dog. Like, I thought the virtual draft was kind of cool. I don't know if they'll continue with it. I don't think they will. Um, but I like the format. Like I know Roger Goodell still got booed virtually. That was pretty awesome to see.
That was cool. Yeah,
Yeah, he seemed to enjoy it as well. And on the Wikipedia page says the location for the draft was his basement. That was pretty funny. um,
yeah.
I don't know. I liked it overall, but I don't think it's going to continue. What about you? What do you think of it?
Yeah, I think it worked well. I mean, there was no glitches, which was a great. I mean, that's something everybody was
Yeah,
concerned about. What if the NFL was gonna have like a big glitch or something happen? Like even in regards to like trades, because when teams trade draft picks, like how would that work? But it seemed to work well, and also it was funny. Like you said, seeing dogs like Bill Belichick's dog
yeah.
even like some other players dogs like just like celebrating with them is also cool to see.
Or Jerry
And
Jones, like in his like yacht, looked like a James Bond villain or something underneath his yacht. That was pretty cool as well.
that was cool. Yeah, yeah, it was cool seeing like everybody's draft setup, like with all their computers surrounding them and like everything like that. There was also like, of course, the emotions weren't taken away because you still saw players celebrating with their families, and of course, it's a big moment for them. So
Yeah.
it does get
Sorry, continue.
Oh no, I was just gonna say it does get emotional for a lot of players, and of course you saw that this past weekend.
Yeah. I don't want to get too far into this, but I know ESPN and a bunch of other networks got criticized a lot for how deep they went into people's like backstories. I don't want to get too far into that, obviously, but like
Mm,
I know like they apologized for saying like one player's mom had a drug addiction. That's like one of his like three key features of his draft stock or whatever. And
yeah,
it's like that was kind of a negative aspect of the whole weekend, but I think overall it was pretty well done.
yeah, Yeah, it was overall a success, I think.
Yeah, and
Um,
yeah, number one pick, of course, was Joe Burrow, and that was not
no
expected.
shock.
I don't think. I mean, it's expected the last couple of months, but I think before the season, no one. I don't think he's on anyone's radar even. Definitely not a first round pick. So what did you make of his pick first overall and the sort of season he had with LSU?
Well, I expected it. I mean, everybody expected him to go number one. I mean, you can't ignore the crazy season he had with LSU this past season and winning the national championship for the LSU. It was a great season. Uh, he was, of course, a Heisman Trophy winner, which also added to his big resume. He had 60 passing touchdowns, which was also the most in college football. Also having a perfect season with them and winning the national championship, and also like when he transferred from, I'm pretty sure he transferred from Ohio State to LSU, and just to see like how great he managed to play at that school and go perfect like a perfect season with the team, and considering also how people didn't think he was going to be this great, how people didn't think he would be a number one pick was also uh, great to see. Uh, but yeah, I think Joe Burrow was the right pick for Cincinnati as what was probably the easiest pick in this draft. What about you?
Also another little note there we had I wrote there was the Bengals' second round pick T Higgins went to Clemson. So both of them went from Tigers, LSU and Tigers and Clemson Tigers to Bengals. Kind of a cool little kind of a cool little thing there.
Yeah, one of
Um,
the best college, one of the best college schools, like one of the worst NFL teams.
yeah.
That's
um, and obviously Burrow wasn't the only good quarterback drafted on was it Thursday night, the first round.
Thursday. Yeah.
Um, Tua Tagovailoa, I think I got that right. uh, went sorry for pronouncing the name wrong. Went to the Miami Dolphins, fifth overall from Alabama. What do you make of that pick? That was a pretty good pick as well, I think.
Yeah, I think with two, I think it was I thought it was between number five and number six, the Chargers and Dolphins. Of course, he went number five to the Dolphins. I do think it's a great team for Tua. Of course, with his big resume, he led Alabama or he played in back-to-back national championships with Alabama in the 2017-2018 season. And in 2017, he actually replaced Jalen Hurts, who is now a Philadelphia Eagles player. Um, in 2018, he did win against Georgia with that overtime drive, that game-winning drive against the Georgia Bulldogs. Um, I do think something that's concerning of his, that's why he's not the number one pick, is something that is concerning is that he is injury prone sometimes. Like last year, he had that big injury in one of his games. But definitely, if he can stay healthy, he can definitely be a great player for Miami. And also something, a little note to mention, he also is the first left-handed quarterback to be drafted in 10 years, which is a great accomplishment for a left-handed player. And and when he does play his first NFL game since 2017, he'll be the first left-handed quarterback since 2017 to play to start a game, I should say. Uh, but yeah, I do think with the Miami Dolphins as they're rebuilding right now and all the picks they had, I think the Dolphins were the right pick for him. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think they drafted pretty well Miami, and you mentioned they're rebuilding, so I think getting a potential franchise quarterback with a couple of other pretty big drafts behind him as well, I think that's pretty good opportunity for him to sort of ease his way into a team and sort of be able to take the reins from there. Like I think because he's left-handed, just kind of flip the playbook a lot for a lot of players. And I think if when you're rebuilding, now's the perfect time to draft a left-handed quarterback. Because now when you're rebuilding, you can find the players that fit Tua rather than making Tua fit those other players. So yeah, I like the pick as well.
Yeah, definitely. And just right after him, number six overall, quarterback Justin Herbert, who played at the University of Oregon, went to the LA Chargers. Of course, he played at Oregon. He was born and raised there. He was the Rose Bowl MVP this past season, and in 2019 he won the William V. Campbell Trophy, which in academics is essentially the Heisman Award. What did you think about this pick for the Chargers?
Yeah, the Chargers were another team that needed a good quarterback, and I think Herbert. I haven't watched a lot of college football to be honest, but I've looked at some of his highlights when we were preparing for this video, and it looks pretty good. He's pretty good range, and the Chargers seem really high on him, which is pretty good. And yeah, I think it's a good pick. And I know a lot of people were thinking that maybe the Dolphins should have picked him because he's not as injury prone as Tua could turn out to be. But obviously the Dolphins didn't pick him, so I think the Chargers got a good pick at number 6.
Yeah, and of course they don't have Philip Rivers anymore. And like you, I haven't watched much of college football, but I do know that like he did have a successful season at Oregon and successful career. I would say in his college days, but but yeah, definitely they found someone to replace Philip Rivers because of course he went to the Colts. He signed with the Colts recently, or should I say a couple weeks ago now.
Yeah,
Yeah, but yeah, it was a good pick for them, definitely. Also, another quarterback that was drafted in the first round was Jordan Love from Utah State, going to the Green Bay Packers 26 overall, which was
controversial one.
definitely a controversial pick for everyone. He was born, or should I say, he is from Bakersfield, California. He played 3 years at Utah State. And just in this past season, before being drafted, he threw just for over 3,400 yards. And in his final game of his collegiate career, he threw 3 touchdowns for 317 yards in the loss to Kent State. Um, do you think this was a good pick for the Packers? Like, what do you think about it?
A lot of people don't like this pick, right? Right? I know that like the Packers.
Me included.
Yeah, you included. The Packers traded up to get this pick, which I think a lot of people were thinking means they would take one of the many wide receivers available to help out Aaron Rodgers and sort of win now. But I like this pick. A lot of people don't because I think it sets them up for potentially the next 10 years, next 15 years, even if he ends up being as good as people think he can be. Because look at I think the Packers have had 6 starting quarterbacks since 2000, which is ridiculous. Like I think the AFC East, I think it was this year, like more than 6.
Yeah.
So, and then the Packers was 6 in 20 years. So I think that's pretty crazy. If you look at who they've had like mentioned Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers was an amazing succession. And then now, as Aaron Rodgers' career starts to wind down, you're gonna start looking at Jordan Love, I think, as the quarterback for the future. So I really like the pick in that sense. Although I understand why Packers fans and other people are confused as to why they didn't pick up someone to help Aaron Rodgers win now. I do really like the pick looking forward in 2 or 3 years when Aaron Rodgers does decide to retire.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't think it was the best pick for the Packers, especially in the first round of the draft when you had a bunch of wide receivers to choose from, like a big wide receiver class this past draft, or in the 2020 draft, I should say. But I definitely think the Packers took the future way instead of like building for right now. I'm assuming that's why they chose Jordan Love. I mean, Jordan Love will probably be learning from Aaron Rodgers like for the next couple of years, and then I guess he's going to start at quarterback for the 2-3 years from now, probably depending on when Aaron Rodgers retires. But I don't I think the Packers front office has to like indicate that the time for Aaron Rodgers to win is now. So I think that
Yeah.
for them not to draft a wide receiver in like any of the 7 rounds was concerning. And also, I mean, they didn't really have the best draft, I didn't think, which we'll also talk
We'll
about.
get to that.
Yeah, we'll get into that, our winners and losers of the NFL draft. But I don't know. I don't think it was the right move for a first round pick for the Packers, especially with a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers right now.
And also, there's a lot of other notable picks throughout this draft. A pair of Ohio State teammates went at number 2 and number 3. Defensive end Chase Young went to the Washington Redskins at number 2, and cornerback Jeff Okuda went to the Detroit Lions to round out the top three. Number 11, Mekhi Becton went to the New York Jets. I really like this pick. I think not only did they need an offensive tackle, but like this guy is like a freak of nature, right? Like he's 6'7", 364 pounds according to his NFL profile, but he can run 40 yards in 5.1 seconds. Like that's ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
So I think when you have someone that size who's that athletic, I think it's impossible not to draft him. And a lot of people were surprised he didn't go higher as well. But I really like that pick.
Also, the wide receiver class, as we mentioned, was huge this draft. A record tying 36 wide receivers were taken in the 7 rounds. A couple of notable wide receivers that were drafted, especially in the first round, was Henry Ruggs III, who went to the Raiders from Alabama, the University of Alabama. Also, another Alabama wide receiver, Jerry Jeudy, going to the Denver Broncos, and then also going to the Dallas Cowboys from Oklahoma. CeeDee Lamb was also a talented wide receiver.
Yeah, I know some people though were surprised that the Raiders went with Henry Ruggs because I know like all three of the names you just mentioned, like Ruggs, Jeudy, and Lamb, are all sort of seen as like the big three elite wide receivers available. A lot of people were surprised that the Raiders chose Ruggs instead of the other two. But I think a lot of people saw Ruggs as like the least sort of polished, I guess, of the three.
Yeah,
So I'm sort of surprised they didn't go with Lamb or Jeudy, but yeah, so like 36 wide receivers drafted, and none of them went to the Packers. I think was the most surprising part of that draft.
definitely. Yeah. Um, Also, a record-breaking draft for LSU. They had
Yeah,
14 picks in the draft, which tied a record from Ohio State in 2004 for the most picks in a 7-round draft form. Of course, we know LSU had a great season,
yeah,
winning the national championship, going undefeated.
perfect season. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, do you think it was? Of course, it was right for LSU to have tied the most draft picks taken. What did you think about that?
yeah, I think it makes sense. Like, also it's kind of amazing. Like Ohio State as well continues to just like pump out unlimited draft players. So essentially, like they had like I think we said like two of the top three were Ohio State, and the other one was the number one pick, Joe Burrow from LSU. So those teams
Mm,
and Alabama, like some of these top schools, just continue to just produce incredible players with their amazing coaches and their popular programs. So I'm not really surprised that they sort of
yeah,
tied the record.
yeah, definitely. Also, like even the SEC conference also drafts a lot
Yeah,
of players too. Like if you look at all the 7 rounds, I think of course they had the most players drafted. So that's also a great accomplishment. I mean, that's probably the best conference, and like I don't know college football too much, but I'm assuming that would it would be the best conference in all of college football, considering the talent that comes out of the SEC every year, especially Alabama, LSU, and other schools too.
yeah, definitely. And there's another. We mentioned the Packers' decision not to uh, draft any wide receivers. Another team that made some questionable decisions during this draft was the New England Patriots, who of course lost Tom Brady to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, as we talked about last week or last episode rather. Um, and so they need a quarterback to replace him, and decided not to draft any, which was quite surprising. But have reportedly, or maybe officially now, have signed some undrafted ones. Now they've also been linked to Cam Newton, of course. That'd be a pretty big acquisition if they managed to get him, which might be why they didn't draft any. But they also seem pretty high on 2019 fourth round draft pick Jared Stidham. What do you make of the decision to not draft a quarterback in the many opportunities they had to do so?
I mean, I thought they were going to draft a quarterback. I thought maybe they would move up in the draft to possibly try and draft a quarterback. Um, Maybe like a Jordan Love,
Yeah,
if not going to the Packers, would have worked. But I think with their quarterback situation now that Tom Brady's not there, like with Jared Stidham, and I think they also have Cody Kessler as another quarterback. So I mean, of course, they're not like I don't think they would be the right quarterbacks to lead this franchise if they want to
not Not
win from.
obviously neither of them are obviously Tom Brady level.
Definitely not. No, I mean Brady was drafted late in the round, so maybe like if they could have gotten like a late quarterback, like maybe he could have been successful. Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows? Especially with Bill Belichick as your coach, but or as their coach. But yeah, I was surprised they didn't. I was surprised they didn't draft a quarterback. That kind of shocked me. But also they also had they also signed some undrafted players. I don't have names right now, but I think they, like you said, they did sign an undrafted quarterback. But
One of
yeah,
the ones that we're looking at was, I think his name is Jake Fromm. I think he ended up going to Buffalo, I think.
yeah, he went to
And
Buffalo.
I think rumor has it was that the Patriots were going to draft him, but then Buffalo grabbed him essentially right before the Patriots picked him, or could have picked him. So I think Buffalo don't really need a quarterback. They have Josh Allen as a starter, but I guess Fromm's going to be a pretty good backup, I think, and obviously help uh, taking it from your division rivals. Obviously, a pretty big power move as well, especially when the Patriots might not win the division this year, and Buffalo might be able to take that step to the next level. But I think that's a pretty good draft pick by them as well.
Yeah, I definitely think Buffalo is gonna, like, I'm predicting now probably Buffalo will win the draft. I mean, I don't know about free agency and like who's gonna sign who, but I think right now the Bills are probably gonna win the AFC East right now, and maybe the Patriots might be in rebuild mode, but I doubt that. But we'll see.
Those Buffalo fans have been suffering for a long time, so
Exactly. Yeah.
they can only hope that maybe this is the year. Now they've got some other good, there's done some other good business as well in the off season, so maybe this is the year they finally turn it around.
Yeah, I mean have been successful, like a little bit successful. Like they have made the playoffs in the past couple of years, but of course they did lose in the wild card game each
Yeah.
time. So yeah, we'll see. We'll find out.
And so we also decided to pick our winners and losers from this NFL draft. So I guess we'll start with you. Who do you think are the winners of this 2020 NFL draft?
Uh, well, my two winners. One of them is the Miami Dolphins. They did have uh, a great draft. They had 11 draft picks, of course, including quarterback Tua Tagovailoa. Uh, they had three picks in the first round, the Dolphins. So they definitely did. Like they picked Austin Jackson, an offensive tackle, selected 18th overall, and they also drafted Noah. I can't pronounce his last name.
Igbinoghene? Uh,
Yeah,
sorry for
something like that.
that.
Yeah, he was selected 30th. So they definitely rebuilded well with these picks from the 2020 draft. And of course, as we mentioned before, hopefully Tua stays healthy, especially with his injury background, as we mentioned. But I think they definitely did well in the draft, and they also selected a great amount of O line and D line players, building up both sides of the team. Um, Besides the Dolphins, I said the Cincinnati Bengals are also another team that's won. I mean, of course, we can't forget about Joe Burrow. I mean, he's
Yeah,
probably, I'm assuming he's going to be the future quarterback for the Bengals.
yeah.
And I mean, they did also draft a wide receiver, T. Higgins, and they also did draft a couple of LBs, including Logan Wilson from Wyoming. So I think they did draft well. I mean, we'll have to see how Joe Burrow plays on the team with all his new offensive weapons and even the defense too. We'll have to see how they play in next season. But I think it's going to be a couple of years probably till we see the Bengals probably making a wild card at the best. But who
Yeah.
knows? We'll find out. What about you? Who were your winners?
Yeah, I agree with those two picks. Like the Bengals and Dolphins both drafted very well, and both hopefully are going to get back on the right track and start rebuilding those teams. And I know we already kind of mentioned this, but you don't agree with this pick. But I also think the Green Bay Packers drafted well. I promise I'm not a Packers fan. um, I think I think they set them up for the future pretty well with the Jordan Love pick, and but again, I think they're also losers in a way because they didn't get a wide receiver. They didn't help out Aaron Rodgers to win now, which he obviously desperately wants to do. They can also, of course, sign one as a free agent, but passing on was it 36 of them that got drafted or something. Um, I think that was pretty bad call by them. but we'll have to see how it works out, of course. Another winner, Baltimore Ravens, because they already didn't really have any holes in their roster. I don't think they were a pretty solid team throughout. They added a
Until
couple of players. Sorry, what's
I'm
that?
sorry, I was just gonna say until the divisional game last season, but
Yeah.
yeah.
um, yeah. So they needed a linebacker. But they drafted LSU's Patrick Queen, 28th overall. So I think they've filled in one of the holes they needed to fill. I still think they're one of the most complete teams going into next year, and I think that team is going to be pretty competitive. um, so I thought they drafted pretty well as well. And
Yeah.
so now let's move on to the losers. Who do you have on your loser board here?
Um, my first one is the Packers. No shock.
Of course.
Well, first of all, they drafted Jordan Love. I definitely I don't think it was the right move for the first round. And I mean, of course, it was a big shock for everybody that the Packers drafted a quarterback with someone like Aaron Rodgers, who was talented enough. But I mean, I'm assuming they're going for the future right now by doing that, by picking Jordan Love in the first round. But I don't know how they're gonna do that. But also, they didn't draft a wide receiver any of their picks from all the 7 rounds, which is also something concerning too. They didn't really build around Rodgers, uh, and they also didn't think about choosing an offensive, like I said, like an offensive tackle in the early stages, or even a defensive player, which was also something concerning. Uh, but yeah, overall, they didn't really have any eye-popping selections and didn't really draft any major offensive or defensive players. Uh, and yeah, like I said, that they were more focused on the future more than now. Like, of course, this past season they just lost the NFC Championship game against the 49ers. So they did have a successful season, going 13-3, and I thought they would build off of that success and keep like drafting more players for the next couple of years. But yeah, that's one of the losers I had. But also another loser I had was the Chicago Bears, which is also in their division, their rival, uh, the Packers' rival. Um, in the second round, they didn't have a first round draft player, I should say. So that was something like I'm assuming they traded it, but in the second round they didn't, like, they drafted someone named Cole Kmet in the second round, and I don't think it would be the best fit for the Bears offense with Mitchell Trubisky at quarterback. I mean, of course, right now it's an interesting quarterback situation with Nick Foles that signed with the team this offseason. So it'd be interesting to see how like their how they handle that situation. First of all, they only had 7 players picked in this draft, and like I mentioned, there's no first rounder too. So and also they didn't really draft any offensive talents, especially with the struggles they had on offense this past season, not making the playoffs. But yeah, that was not a that was a loser for me. Another loser. How about you? What were your losers?
One of them we already mentioned was the New England Patriots. Like, I think they needed to replace Tom Brady, and but instead focus mostly on defense. We already kind of mentioned some possible solutions for them, like signing Cam Newton or sort of developing players already on the roster or the undrafted free agents they've signed. But I think they needed to draft an elite quarterback and they didn't. I think someone like a Jordan Love or Jake Fromm or one of these kind of lower first round to later rounds guys. They should have drafted one and they didn't. So I think in that sense they're losers. Also the Denver Broncos. One of the areas they needed to help out was the receivers. So they did with that with Jerry Judy from Alabama, for example. But they needed to address offensive tackle pretty badly, and they did sign an undrafted free agent. But I think it would have made sense. They had, I think, 10 picks in that draft, so I think it would have made sense to probably take one of the better available ones than to draft an undrafted free agent or sign an undrafted free agent. So I think they're another one of the people who came out of this draft not really having got what they went in looking for.
Yeah, definitely. And speaking of the NFL draft, on this day 3 years ago in 2017, the first round of the NFL draft took place in Philadelphia. And as we know, for the first overall pick was Myles Garrett to the Cleveland Browns. And it was followed by Mitchell Trubisky to the Chicago Bears, the second overall pick. of course, we know the biggest steal was Patrick Mahomes, who was drafted number 10 overall to the Kansas City Chiefs. And of course, I think that was a big steal. I'm assuming you would think that too.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. But of course,
Um,
nine teams, I think, like made a decision that they'll regret for their franchise, especially the Chicago Bears, who I don't know for sure if they might have moved up in the draft to draft a quarterback, but I mean, looking at the success now with Patrick Mahomes, definitely 9 teams regretted it. And of course, in his first year starting, he led the Chiefs to the AFC Championship game where they eventually lost to the New England Patriots. And then his second year, this just past season, he won the Super Bowl against the San Francisco 49ers. So just looking at his talent right now, it's like you can definitely tell a lot of teams made a decision that they'll regret for sure.
yeah, and I think he also won MVP as well the first year that he started full time as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think they said there are 9 teams there who regret not drafting him. I know it's a pretty bad pun, but hindsight is 2020. um, sorry, still not subscribed. Uh, um, yeah, there's some other notable picks in that draft as well. Like I think Christian McCaffrey was a pretty big pick in that draft as well. He went
Yeah.
eighth to the Carolina Panthers. Arguably the best running back in the game at the moment, and just signed a big contract extension the last week or 2 weeks ago or something. Leonard Fournette went fourth overall to the Jaguars. He's also a pretty good running back. He's been linked to the Bills recently, I think. And Deshaun Watson, quarterback, was drafted 12th overall to the Houston Texans. So there are a lot of players, I think, in retrospect, that would have gone higher in the draft. But I said, like, obviously, hindsight is kind of cruel, I guess, in a way. But yeah,
Yeah,
I think
it's
that.
it. Oh,
Sorry, go
sorry.
ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, a lot of people who are gonna regret the decisions they made in 2017, and there are some organizations now that have changed dramatically, um, because of the picks in that first round 3 years ago.
Yeah, and looking at the picks, like looking at Miles Garrett going number 1 overall, like that's, I mean, we all know he was
Yeah,
involved in that crazy
he's a
that
bad
crazy
boy.
altercation. But yeah, that altercation with the Steelers this past season. So definitely he's definitely like known for that, which is looking back at it is pretty terrible to look at.
Not something
But
to be known for.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, there's a lot of players in that draft that have success now. But moving on from the NFL draft, something else that's also on this day, 1 year ago, 2019, me and Ben were at Tim Hortons Field in Hamilton, Ontario, for the first ever Canadian Premier League match, where York Nine took on Forge FC in Hamilton at Tim Hortons Field, and they drew 1-1 in a very entertaining game. I think. What do
Yeah.
you remember from that, Ben?
Well, because it was the first ever game, I think it was sort of special to be a part of that. I remember the pre-game. There's a lot of cool stuff going on outside the stadium and inside. A lot of inside, like just before kickoff, having all the people on the field, all the different representatives from the league and owners of the 2 teams and stuff. It was a very special day to be involved in such a potentially crucial moment for Canadian soccer. I think was pretty cool, and yeah, a lot of good memories from that day, of course.
Yeah, I definitely remember all the energy. Like of course, this was a rivalry in the beginning or in the makings, I
Yeah,
should say. It was great seeing like York Nine fans and Forge fans, like, and it's just great, like, for the first ever CPL game to be played like
yeah.
in a rival. Uh, I can't remember. I think it's the name of the rivalries. Do you have the name of the rivalry?
It's the 905 Derby, I think.
Not 905 Derby. Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely like playing that the first game ever, like with those 2 teams, was like it was great to see.
yeah.
Definitely.
And also, we were right near the York Nine fans, and they were pretty good all game. They were excellent, loud, and seeing that first goal go in as well was like I'm glad the game didn't end 0-0, so you could see the first ever goal, which was Ryan Telfer. So that was a pretty good goal. And yeah, it was the start of what I thought was a really successful and entertaining first season of the league.
Yeah, it was definitely an exciting game for sure. Okay, so last week me and Ben gave our greatest team, our greatest NHL team to win the Stanley Cup in the past decade. This week, we're going to talk about the greatest MLB team of the past decade to win the World Series. Um, and Ben, do you want to start with your pick?
Yeah, I can go first. I've gone with the 2016 Cubs because they celebrated 100 years at Wrigley Field that year, which is obviously an important milestone as well. It's an iconic stadium, and won their first World Series in since 1908. Um, so they won 103 games as well, winning the National League Central pretty comfortably, 17 and a half games. All three of their playoff series were close, and they're the first team in quite a long time. I think it was since 1985 to be down 3-1 in the World Series and win 4-3. They beat the Cleveland Indians. And their roster is had 7 All-Stars on it, had award winners, potential future Hall of Famers, many of whom are still with the team, of course, including Chris Bryant, Anthony Rizzo, who are two of my favorite players in the league. Ben Zobrist was on that team, John Lester, and there's just so many special players on that team, and I'm glad they sort of finally ended that World Series drought that they had.
Yeah, definitely. My pick is the 2013 Red Sox. This team, they won 97 games in the regular season as they won the AL East by 5.5 games. In their playoff run to winning the World Series, they first of all they beat the Tampa Bay Rays, who won the wild card in the ALDS in 4 games. Following that up with an ALCS win against the Detroit Tigers in 6 games, as the Red Sox went to the World Series where they met the St. Louis Cardinals. In the World Series, they were down 2-1, but the Red Sox went on to win 3 straight games, which clinched their first World Series title in their home field since the 1918 season. So it was definitely great to see the fans celebrating on their home field. And of course, this was their 8th title in their franchise, and the 9th was in 2018. Uh, the team that season had a stacked roster. They had players like David Ortiz, future Hall of Famer, Dustin Pedroia, and Xander Bogaerts, just to name a few. And also in pitchers-wise, a couple notable pitchers they had was John Lester, Clay Buchholz, and Koji Uehara.
And you mentioned John Lester. I think another notable thing to mention is that both he and new Cubs manager David Ross as well were on both of the teams that we just mentioned. That's kind of a cool
Yeah.
coincidence. Like they're on both, and yeah, that's kind of a cool little coincidence.
Definitely.
David Ross, of course, one of the best leaders in MLB, and said now he's the Cubs manager after they fired John Madden at the end of last season.
Yeah, there's also we didn't mention this as one of our teams, but the Giants also won
Yeah,
2010, 2012, 2014. So that was also like a great dynasty too, but I don't think that they had the ride that these two teams had, the Cubs and the Red Sox.
yeah,
That's why we didn't.
they had a very good half decade, but I don't think they necessarily had the outstanding individual season like the other teams did. They just had 3 out of 5 very good, consistent seasons with some very good players on their teams as well, like Buster Posey, Tim Lincecum, etc.
Yeah, someone else we didn't mention was also the 2019 Washington
Yeah,
Nationals. That was also a crazy World Series, being the Astros in 7 games. And I think it was their first World Series in their history. I'm pretty sure.
yeah. It used to be
Yeah,
the Expos as well, so a little Canadian connection there too.
yeah, definitely.
I think it was the first season without Bryce Harper as well, so that was a bit ironic.
Yeah,
Bryce Harper left to win a World Series, and then the Nationals won the World Series.
hmm definitely. Um, so last week we also talked about some throwback games we've been watching. I guess I could. Do you want to start, Ben, with something you've been watching recently?
You can start phone.
Okay. So recently, I saw that there were some Stanley Cup final clinching games. Over the weekend, I watched the 2018 Washington Capitals win in Las Vegas, and also the 2019 St. Louis Blues winning in Boston. It was great, like reliving those games, and I'm not sure if it was the Capitals and Blues first Stanley Cups. I'm pretty sure, if
Uh,
I'm not wrong.
definitely the first since Ovechkin was there. for the Capitals, and it was definitely the Blues' first Stanley Cup.
Yeah, it was definitely great. Like in 2018, seeing Ovechkin win his first Stanley Cup, especially celebrating in front of a lot of Washington Capitals fans in Vegas. A lot attended that
Yeah,
game, so it was great to see. Like
and
it
like
was great to.
six-month party that followed for him.
Yeah, definitely. It was. They just kept celebrating for the whole summer. It was amazing to see. And then also in 2019, the St. Louis Blues, thinking about, as we mentioned last week in our greatest NHL teams, we mentioned the St. Louis Blues and how they were last place in the league and going to the Stanley Cup and winning against the Boston Bruins in 7 games. It was great to see. And like that game 7, they were so dominant against the Bruins, which was sort of like, to me, I thought it was sort of shocking that they would beat like the Bruins, like a stacked Bruins roster like that. It was just it was great to see. Also, besides Stanley Cup Finals, I also saw Kobe's 81-point game against the Raptors, which was definitely something great too. And
Yeah,
also Vince Carter's dunk contest is well-known dunk contest. But yeah, those are the things I've been watching. How about you?
yeah. I know last episode we kind of talked about this every episode, and probably will continue to. But on our last episode, I said that I wanted to watch more old events. So you mentioned Kobe's 81-point game and the Vince Carter dunk contest. So I kind of tuned into those a little bit. Those are pretty cool to watch. And then uh, I also been watching NFL Network last night. Sunday night was showing the most recent Super Bowl. So as I mentioned, Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs beating the 49ers. So I think I watched the second half of that. And Sportsnet's been showing some old soccer games from the old FA Cup games. So yesterday I was watching, I think it was 2013, Manchester City versus Wigan Athletic. And then Chelsea game was on after that, I think, as well, too. So those are pretty cool. And also, like, I've been getting into golf a bit as well recently. So they've been showing, like, their old Ryder Cups and other old tournaments. So it's been pretty cool to watch some of those as well.
Yeah, definitely. Like I also wanted to just mention like some NBA finals too.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
some Miami Heat, like some of the Miami Heat games and Miami Heat and Spurs. Even before that, like when the Celtics and Lakers played in their NBA finals.
yeah.
But yeah, definitely.
And that's pretty much all we have for this episode. But we do want to tell you about our new series that's coming out this Thursday. The first episode, I said this Thursday, um, where we will, there's a new series called Throwback Thursday, because it's on Thursdays, where we'll be looking back at some franchises, not just Toronto based, although we are going to start with some Toronto teams. I think the first episode is going to be the Raptors. And we're going to look back at making an all time roster, almost like an all star team. So picking players from all generations of the team's history, going back to the first ever season to present, and making, they said, like almost like an all-star team with franchise players. So stay tuned for that this Thursday. And future weeks, we're gonna hopefully do some other teams like the Blue Jays, Maple Leafs, and etc. And I said eventually go outside of Toronto as well. But yeah, that's all we have for today. Is there anything else you want to add?
Yeah, just look out for our new series on Thursdays, Throwback Thursdays. It's called, of course,
Yeah.
coincidentally enough. But yeah, I don't have anything to add. But we thank you guys for watching our third episode of Off the Sidelines. Of course, my name is Matthew Lee Bruni and Benedict Rhodes, and Benedict Rhodes is on the other side. We thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching, everyone.